Hi, my name is Dion Carpenter, and a few years ago I wrote a book called Trust Training, a field manual for confident trust in God before, during, and after life's battles. It is a women's Bible study to help people who are learning how to trust God in different situations. So there are several sections in this book, and if you happen to stumble on this a clip on YouTube without knowing anything about it, I'd like to let you know that this is a little clip that is to help introduce the fourth section of this book. And if you would like to, this is the things that are on this paper, and the things that are on this paper are there is a handout that you can find on the website that is there, wildsockspress.com. You can get a little handout. There's a free download that will help you so you can write down notes as I'm walking through this. So in case you didn't get that already, I'm going to stop for a minute so that you can go download that and come back, and we'll go through this, how to crash. All right. First, before I want to go through these particular handouts, let me give you one little flyover idea about where I'm coming from in this whole idea of how to crash. The big idea of the Trust Training book is that trust in God will look different depending on what season of life we're in, or where we are in connection with a big event, something that's going on. So if the big event that you're kind of worrying about and wondering about is in front of you, it hasn't happened yet, that would all be under the cover of the before the battle, because you're thinking about it. It will happen, or it might happen. There's generally a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry and fear, questions, not sure how to approach things, and so learning how to trust God in that situation is, how do I channel that adrenaline and the anxiety and fear and wondering and the confusion into trust in God. During the battle, it's going on right now. It's whatever, maybe you've been trusting God about semester at school or final exams, and then there you are sitting in the classroom and you got the exam in front of you, and so it's happening right now. And so during the battle is figuring out how to trust God as things are going rapidly. And once again, there's a lot of adrenaline flowing generally, because you're right in the middle of it. You're right in the middle of someone you love being in the hospital, or you're right in the middle of dealing with some kind of big crisis situation. After the battle, though, is an entirely different scenario, because whatever was going on, it has already happened. It's already in the bag. It's already done. And generally, there is a real adrenaline crash. So physically and spiritually and emotionally, we tend to crash, to let go in either exhaustion or in that adrenaline crash. And so the first thing that happens as we're looking at this, how to crash, this first worksheet, look for the paper that says how to crash without a trust connection to God. Over and over and over again, something big would happen, and I wouldn't deal with it well, the aftermath well, and I would tend to have a big crash and it was pretty ragged. So this first one is I don't recommend anybody do it this way, but I just know this is the way I used to do it, and it's the way that a lot of people handle the season that's after the battle. So first of all, let's look up here at the top in the very corner. First of all, the big event has already happened, and it can be all kinds of big events. It can be the big event It can be a change or a loss that was happening. There might have been some kind of trauma, like someone you loved was in the hospital for a long time. Or it may be simple hard work. You may have been in a semester of school and then you finish semester tests, or after the wedding or after the funeral. So you see, there's whatever's been going on. Maybe you lost a friend, or you lost your house, or there was a disaster. That's already happened, and it resolved itself however it resolved itself. And there's almost always this delayed reaction, you know, for a few days or a while we're going along and we're doing, and then it seems like there's this dip. And that's what I want to look at. Here's the way that I used to look at, and let me just kind of orient you on what's going on this sheet before we go in. This line that goes across is, let's imagine that this is your normal zest for life. And it's going to be that way on this one as well. Normal zest for life. So if you happen to be a cheerful person, this is a good day. You get up in the morning, this is an ordinary day. That would be this, whatever this line. Some people's lines is pretty upbeat, and some people are little Eeyores, and they tend to be glum by nature, but wherever it is, this is your normal. Now these things going down the side this is kind of quantifying the level of the dip that we have. And if we go down just a little bit, we're still eager and ready for new experiences, but after a while, but if we go a little deeper, maybe we're perhaps tired but still able to be objective. This might be classic illustration of this is a doctor who works 2 shifts, and at the end of it they're really tired, but if somebody came up to them and needed them, they would still know, oh yeah, I know what to do for this, and I know he needs 5 cc's of this or whatever. So there's really tired but still able to make objective decisions. If we go even deeper into a crash, this is where you start getting really emotionally all over the map, weepy or irritable. You're kind of prickly. You're kind of having trouble with holding it all in, and are having trouble rolling with it. If somebody comes along and does the least little thing, you kind of explode with that. If we crash even deeper, we're at the place where we are really, this is a real crash down at the bottom. Feel numb, absolutely exhausted, paralyzed. It's like emotional winter where the leaves are all off the tree and there's nothing you can do. You're just day after day just completely dead inside. A lot of times there's depression with this, or the feeling of being dead inside. Okay, so here's how I used to do it. There's this delayed reaction. Oh, everything's fine. I'm glad that the wedding is over. I'm glad the semester is over. But then there comes this crash. And let's take this off and see what happens here. The crash. There is an adrenaline crash and a spiritual crash. Whatever the verse that you thought that was the promise that was keeping you going, it's like all of a sudden it goes, it's like it's gone. There's a feeling of being, for me, there was a feeling of guilt and shame because I could sense myself just plummeting into an emotional pit, and I felt really bad about doing that. Felt a lot of guilt and shame I felt out of control, that I couldn't pull it together again. I felt exhausted. And so in my mind, because I felt like God accepted me and loved me when I was, on duty, but then He didn't love me as much when I was not on duty. There was kind of a distance. It's like, here's God and here's me, and I head toward this crash. And so I bring into it a lot of shame and guilt. And down here at the bottom, I have this rock bottom. I'm at rock bottom, wherever the rock bottom was. I felt a lot of distance from God. I felt blah. I would read the Bible. I would try to do things, try to be interested in what was going on around me, but I just felt blah. I was tapped out. I had been running on empty, and so I felt completely drained. There was a lot of depression with this, and a lot of fear that I was down in this pit, and it would remind me of times that I had been in times of depression earlier in my life. And so there's a kind of a sense of hopelessness of, oh, here I am again. There were lots of doubts about God and about myself and other people. For me, most of the time when I had a crash, it was because I was doing intense Christian ministry, like starting a church or pouring myself out in ministry to other people. But there would be the little jostlings, and people would hurt my feelings, and I would feel like it didn't work out the way that I wanted, maybe. And so there were lots of doubts about myself and others, and a lot of shame for being here. And eventually, sometimes there would be some days where I was just like, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't able to do anything. I wasn't able to rouse myself. But then the emotions would start coming back of all the ragged things that had happened in it. That if I had been in ministry, the people that had hurt my feelings or that hadn't appreciated as well as they should. And so there would be a lot of, I would have this weepiness. There would be these unprocessed feelings. And because I was a pastor's wife and didn't want to go, ragging on people, I would keep it all hidden. So like 2 o'clock in the morning, I would wake up, because I would have all these feelings churning inside of me. And maybe you have had that happen to you, where I would have these imaginary conversations with Mary, who didn't appreciate me and all the stuff that I would do. And why didn't you say this? Or I can't believe you did that. Or you hurt my feelings here. Or there was this, and I would go round and round and keep talking about it and not get a resolution. And finally I would just exhaust myself. And there is this place that happens when we crash, and it's ragged like this, where we can get ourselves into a little loop where I feel really completely numb, and then I start feeling things, and so I get myself all worked out, but I don't know what to do with it, and that makes me feel depressed, and so I can get into this loop. And this thing can turn into a long-term kind of depression. But eventually, I would get to the place, I would say, I gotta pull myself together, I can't be doing this. I would get tired. Eventually, I would just get tired of hearing myself whine. I would get tired of this little pity party, and I would decide, I was a little bit rested, vegging out had actually helped me some to recover some strength, and I was kind of done with it of hashing it and rehashing and go, well, this is ridiculous, I'm going to keep going. And so I would get to the place, I'm back up at where I'm a little bit more objective, and I'm thinking, okay, enough of this, enough of this, you got to move on. And so I'm starting to feel stronger, but I haven't learned anything from this experience. I just have been kind of in a swamp, and I'm just thrilled to be getting out if I can get out. I got sick of obsessing with whatever was going on, and so I just stuffed it into a lockbox. So here, so there is this baggage that is going here. I'm getting a bunch of baggage here. Okay, here I've got a bunch of resentments. And here I've got a bunch of shame and doubt. So I've got this shame and doubt from when I was absolutely in the pit. I've got these resentments that have not been resolved with the person. Even if I go talk to the person and say, you know, have a Matthew 18 kind of talk to my brother, I've had so much of obsessing about it and just kind of revving on it that it's, even if I go talk to the person and I'm fine, we have the little, I'm okay, you're okay, we can move on, I still have resentments toward these people, and I carry this baggage into the next situation. But eventually I'm deciding, you know what, I've got to move on. I'm a Christian. For pity's sakes, I'm a pastor's wife. I've got to get back into being spiritual again. And so about at this point, I've been away from God all this time. I've been away from God here. I've been away from God here. But about here, I think, okay, well, I better go reconnect with God again. But there's been all this distance that I haven't been talking to Him. I've been feeling ashamed and away from Him. And so I'm thinking about it as being that I need to confess my sin, the sin of running away from God, and the sin of crashing. I'm thinking of it as being a sin, and it feels icky to have to go, to God and confess. I had this, and look at all this, and I feel so bad that I did that I drag my feet on it, because I come with shame to the Lord, and the Lord, if we confess our sins, He'll forgive us. But I'm going into that with the idea that I really, really blew it by doing this. And so I come back into it with a lot of shame. And I'm ready to get back in the game. I'm ready to go back to being the strong Christian. I'm okay to be the strong, pastor's wife, for pity's sakes. But I'm assuming that this means that I need to go back to doing the same stuff as before. So I'm picking up the burden of ministry, the burden of work that I was doing before, and I do it with a lot of self-contempt. Because I am really embarrassed, and I feel ashamed of this whole season in my life. And I feel like God took me back, but man, I really, that week or that 2 weeks or that month, I was really far away from God, and I feel bad about that. Okay, so there's a better way to do this. And that's the thing that in the Trust Training book, in the After the Battle, the After the Battle part talks about a whole better way to do this that actually increases our trust in the Lord, instead of having this crash be a barrier to trusting the Lord. So let me show you how I do it better. So let's shift over to this side, okay? Now, this is a way better way to do it. Now, and we can go through this pretty quickly in some ways. This thing is exactly the same. The big event is exactly the same. The wording is exact. It's change or loss, the trauma, the hard work, whatever it was is the big event. It happens just as usual. The main difference for me in learning to trust God for it is I am much more clued in that I will likely have a crash of some kind because I'll be exhausted. And so I'm paying more attention of what happened here so that I'm understanding the reason why I'll be having a crash of some kind. And the exact same thing happens. There's usually a delayed reaction, and I have the exact same crash. This exact same adrenaline crash, the exact same emotional crash. But this time, and here's where trust training comes in, I rename it. I relabel it. Instead of calling it a crash and thinking of it in that way, I insert an important step, and that is that I call it run for refuge. It's kind of like you see the momentum of the crash is heading down like this. The same thing is I'm going to run. I'm going to run to Jesus as if Jesus will help me. And I pray a prayer at the beginning, and it changes everything. I say, and I have this whole thing, I say, I pray and commit the whole thing to God, and I say, God, please help me. Okay, watch over me. Watch over me and restore my soul. And what happens with this is that I entrust this whole thing to the Lord. And I say, I know that I'm going to be exhausted, and I know that I need your help, and would you please walk me through each stage here? But I'm doing it in a way that does not require any emotional energy, because I don't have any emotional energy. So the action of trust is the action of just the knowing of the right thing. Now let's see how that changes. And I don't have any shame here that I'm crashing. I'm understanding about myself. I am a frail human being, and I'm exhausted, and I'm going to crash to some degree. I then have the same rock bottom experience, although since I started learning this, rock bottom, instead of being rock bottom, is not usually as low, because there is more peace about it. I'm rock bottom here, but I relabel it as rest. I call it rest. And I see that the Lord is giving me permission. We have God's permission to be tired, to be human. And we relabel this as Sabbath rest. And it's okay if it includes some depression, some sadness, it's okay for it to include things that are sort of messy. That's fine. The biggest thing that I do is give permission to sleep. We need sleep. We need vegging out. It's okay to veg out, but veg out in ways that are restorative, healthy things for you. usually after the physical rest and sleep, if it has been a huge trauma and there is a need to recover because there was some pain or loss with it, I begin to, as I can, I begin to do activities that restore the soul. And I ask a lot of people what it is that they find to restore their soul, and different people have different things that do it. Rest is number one on the list, but there are a lot of things. Simple crafts, if you have a simple arts and craft thing, go do that. Music, beauty is, go to a museum and don't just walk through the museum. Find a favorite painting or a favorite sculpture and just sit and just enjoy it. Or get out in nature. Nature is so restorative. We can get so wrapped around the axle, and just getting out and doing some simple exercise and walking can help. Organize your sock drawer. Not a big, massive project, but little things of organizing one drawer, or organizing one corner, or going out and weeding a section of your garden. It's very restorative, and it can be done very passively. I'm not having to exert a lot of energy. We trust God in this season by knowing, not by doing. In this stage, I don't worry that I'm not doing a lot of active praying. But there is just this knowing that even though I am in a season where I feel at a dead stop, that the Lord gives promises for cycles, that He brings springtime after winter, and He brings fruit after a time of deadness. So I just rest in there. When things begin to roil up, instead of just, talking it out obsessively at 2 a.m. into the room in a made-up conversation with the person, I begin to take that weepiness to Jesus and begin to process the hurts of it, and just the places where I got wounded, or that I was overwhelmed, or I look at things, what got triggered by the things that were going on, and I receive comfort from the Lord. If there is something that needs to be forgiven, and a relationship that needs to be dealt with, I generally in this phase have allow the Lord to comfort me about what I was hurt by the other person, and that makes it easier for me in the next stage to be able to resolve it with the other person, because I've already kind of gotten what I need from the Lord, so that then I have a generosity of spirit to be able to forgive out in the other world. This usually takes me a while. But there comes a point when the rest that I've had really helps me to feel rested, and I'm beginning to feel resolved in the feelings that were jostled. At this point, this is one of the best things, one of the most wonderful things that I see in this trust training thing is once we're back at the place where we're sort of resolved, we start to feel more objective and seize upon that. The Lord has things that we can learn about it. So when I get to the point where I'm resolved with it, I have a certain level of objectivity back, that's when I get my journal in hand and I sit with the Lord and I say, okay, what can I learn from this? Yes, I got hurt by Mary in what was going on, but now that I've kind of resolved that, what are some notes to self of the way that I could do the things better so that I wouldn't run into that problem again? a check for baggage, process any doubts and fears. Were there, what did I started, was there a doubt that I had about God and the way that that big event, unfolded? Is there something that I need to pursue scripture or do some more study or wrestle with the Lord about to get some resolution? And it's at this stage that I finish the work of forgiveness, to say, you know what, that it's resolved. And because of that, I get closure. All of this gives me closure, so that I've healed, I've rested, I've gotten comfort for the things that needed comfort, and there is a sense of closure of, okay, I learned what I needed to learn on it. At this point, I'm ready to get back in the game. And look at the big difference here. I don't have to have a thing of reconnecting with the Lord, because I ran to the Lord here, and I allowed the Lord to give me rest here, and I was talking things over with the Lord here, and I was debriefing with. So there's nothing that I need to reconnect, because the whole season was under His direction, and He was helping me, and He was answering that prayer. Please help me, watch over me, and restore my soul. Here I'm back. And this represents an answer to prayer, not a thing of any kind of shame or guilt. And at this point, my goal here, oftentimes I have a new vision of God. Here I'm kind of blah, and I really don't see the Lord much. But over here, I begin to see, I begin to see the Lord again in greater clarity, in more of His beauty, and I'm ready for my next step. But I'm not assuming, like over here, it's like, okay, if I was doing something, before, I need to do it now. In this way, my goal here is to have a simple, childlike trust in God and obedience to His leading. And oftentimes, He will lead me not to do the same thing as I was doing before, but to do a different thing. It is more of a, what is the simple thing that you want me to do in this season? And that simple, childlike trust allows me to go forward with tremendous confidence. The first time that the Lord kind of led me through, okay, I asked Him, show me how to trust You after the battle. The first time I was all wobbly about it. But then it made me more confident to know that the next time that I went into something where I was an after the battle, I had experience of God actually helping me to restore, and so I had more confidence when I had a crash that it wouldn't need to be as deep as normal, but however deep it got, that the Lord would help me get out and He would restore my soul. And so I have much more confidence heading into a crash that I can trust the Lord to bring me out. All right? This gives you, there is so much more about this. I'm wanting to give this as something to give you a flavor and overview of what is covered in the last section of the Trust Training book. And so I encourage you to go get that book and look at more of what it studies there as it does the book. But this shows you kind of the dynamic of the big idea for that section. And God bless you wherever it is that you are in your walk with the Lord. Blessings on your head. And I'll see you later.